Okay, I'm with Dr. Nicholas King from the Global Biodiversity Information Facility. Tell me a little bit about what your organisation does and why you're here in Cancun.
Okay, the GBIF, as it's called, is an intergovernmental organization that was established to try and provide the protocols and standards for exchange of biodiversity information globally, between countries, between data sets that countries held internally to better manage biodiversity and make decisions about biodiversity, to underpin, for example, the Convention on Biological Diversity and other related conventions. And of course, climate change is having a huge impact on biodiversity. Species are responding quite dramatically to the drivers that are coming through climate change. And so we need to be able to integrate both climate data and biodiversity data. And so the interoperability between the two disciplines, which are physical data in terms of climate data and the biological data, which pertains to species.
Okay, and obviously this gathering of information, the sharing of information, vital to the debate over climate change. Presumably that's why you're here in Cancun, to publicise what you do and to make sure that everybody's aware of the services you provide.
That's correct. We currently have a membership of 55 countries and 46 international organizations, but GBIF was set up by countries to serve the global community. So the more countries that participate and the more organizations that participate, the more the standards get adopted, and therefore the more the data sets become available and are integrated. And obviously the more data there are, the more valuable the analyses are and the more confidence we have in those analyses. So for example, one of the big topics under climate change, of course, is REDD, reducing emissions through forest destruction and degradation. Now, a lot of the discussions around REDD are that we should be trying to ensure that countries which retain tropical forests retain them going forward into the future and don't deforest. Well, that's great in and of itself, but of course climate change means that the climate envelopes that those forests have evolved to coincide with will be moving. So we're able to now take the climate change models and the biodiversity models, the ecological niche models, as we call them, of those tree species, and by integrating them show how those species and the forests themselves will shift under the climate change models. And that allows us to better plan for what's going to happen under climate change.
So, I mean, I'm just interested in the sheer amount, the sheer volume of information that comes your way, and obviously being assessed and reassessed and revised. I mean, I'm interested to know how the process works in the gathering of this information.
Okay, what GBIF is it's provided the platform for data publishing, as we call it, so that the data standards and the common data fields by which biological data would be captured. And then an organization which holds those data simply publishes them, as we call it, to the internet. So when somebody goes through the GBIF data portal, it's not to a centralized database. We don't hold data. The data all sit with the owners of the data. But it's pretty much a Google for biodiversity information. So you put in some search terms, say Mexico, we're here in Mexico, and mangroves, a lot of mangroves around here, and those crawlers will go off and they'll find all the records on mangrove species that originate geographically in Mexico, whether they're held in institutions in North America like the Smithsonian, or in the herbarium in Kew in the United Kingdom, or here in an institution like Canabio in Mexico, and give you a data dump of those data records. You can then utilize those to do your own analyses. So it's providing both access to information as well as providing the tools and services online which allow people to publish their data to common standards. And that's just something that wasn't ever available before.
And the monitoring of how people actually use this information once they've got hold of it, is that something you do, or something you have to do?
It is something that we do. It's very important that we do it because we need to know why people are utilizing the data, what they're using it for, in order to be able to better address those needs. It's really difficult though. One of the things we monitor is publications, where GBIF is mentioned and the data through GBIF is mentioned. But we also, when people go in, they do a user agreement. It's very simple, but it just says that they will inform us of what they're using the data for. Because if we don't know what people are using the data for, it's very difficult to serve those needs. But there's no real obligation for people to inform us. You don't have to go through a lengthy sort of description of who you are and what you are and so on.
Note in the hallway back there's a chart telling us the number of participants, media, various delegations who have been attending the various COPs since they began.
Right.
That's what we're now, COP 16, and the number has grown quite substantially from one COP to another. So presumably your work grows with each one of these meetings.
Yes, the sort of membership at GBIF has grown pretty similarly. When it was started 10 years ago, there were only 17 countries on board. There's now 55 and so on. And I think you're just seeing how important these issues are, is that more and more countries are starting to realize just how important they are. And of course, every one of those institutions here, I think there's something like 1,200 accredited IGOs and NGOs now, has information. So if we can find a mechanism by which that can all be incorporated in the decisions, we get much better decisions at the end of the day.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks very much.